You argue that experiment requires the breaking of eggs. I like that metaphor. And the book, I think, is particularly interesting because it's slightly confessional. You write about some of the eggs you've broken. Tell the audience, I don't want to necessarily pick on one particular example, but how does your life conform to some of the examples you give? How have you broken some eggs?
Well, you know what? Breaking eggs can be interpreted in lots of different ways. I am a huge believer in the power of experimentation. And when you do experiments, sometimes they don't turn out as you expect. Unfortunately, a lot of people call those failures. And I call them data. I'm a scientist. And when you do experiments and they don't turn out as you expect, it's still data. And you can mine it. In fact, in my book, What I Wish I Knew When I Was 20, I have a chapter called The Secret Sauce of Silicon Valley, which is all about the importance of mining failures and the fact that in this area, we are very good at that. I, in fact, include my own failure resume in that book. I have my students write failure resumes, all their biggest screw-ups, personal, professional, and academic. And the idea is it's okay to fail.
You've survived. You still have some hair. This idea of doing lots of companies, of not necessarily being, you know, an 18-year-old entrepreneur, what have you learned from your experience of founding, of creating lots of companies? Is there a kind of wisdom that comes from it, different from the traditional wisdom of growing up? And you might introduce yourself and tell everyone what you do.
Yeah, hi everybody. I'm Kurt Bauer. I'm the co-founder of a company called Bud to Bud, and we have an app running on iOS and Android called QS, Q.US, and it's an integrated music platform, so you can aggregate services and socialize with your friends and listen with them live. So that's what I spend my days doing.
And you've done a lot of startups.
Yes, yes, definitely. And I've also worked at larger companies, and you know, I found myself moving toward, in my career, moving toward smaller companies, smaller environments, because I was too immature to really operate with grown-ups in the larger companies. And
you still don't wear socks, right?
No, I try to avoid it. But I had some profound failures as a result of that. And as everybody's talking here, I'm thinking, well, you know, I wonder if I could go back into a larger environment. And I think, you know, you learn doing entrepreneurial things and, you know, getting involved in M&A and being swallowed by larger companies and then leaving, going to starting another thing, and that whole cycle, you learn patience and when to attack and when to retreat and all those things. And those are still valid in an entrepreneurial environment because you can't do everything.
We can make a long list of different types of risks. And so what happens is we all have our own risk profile. So I'm not a financial risk taker. I'm not a physical risk taker. But as you mentioned in the book, I'm very much an emotional risk taker. I will tell people almost anything, okay? I'm an emotional risk taker.
My husband says he's looking a bit nervous.
You know, but I'm a social risk taker. I'm an emotional risk taker. I'm an intellectual risk taker. We need to know our own risk profile because that allows us to know we might have to have other people on our team who balance us out. The other thing, and I think this is really important, is that startup companies, venture capitalists, are actually trying to squeeze the risk out of their venture. They're not, I mean, a venture capitalist is actually not trying to pick the riskiest venture. They're trying to pick the least risky venture. They want the one that is they want the best team, they want the best market, they want the best technology. And so, yes, they might look like it's risky to the outside world, but they're doing their due diligence and are trying to pick something that has the highest possibility of success. So, I think the whole risk and failure is very intertwined. And when we're kids, this is really important. When we're kids, we are learning all the time through trial and error, right? How many of you walked the first time you tried? How many of you rode a bicycle the first time you tried? Nobody, right? And yet, why do we expect adults to do really complicated things correctly without any mistakes the first time? And so when we're taking on big, bold things, especially innovations that have never been done before, we understand that there's going to be a lot of trial and error. So what we do in our classes to teach people this is we teach them to do experiments, prototypes, prototypes. Do little experiments to test their ideas out so they don't end up leaving a big crater in the ground, right? If you do a little experiment, right? You do a little experiment, you get some little bit of data. Oh, that's encouraging. I now do a bigger experiment. Gives me more data. That's even more encouraging. So this is why venture capitalists go, come back when you've got a prototype. Come back when you've got some customers. Come back when you've got the next milestone, right? And then they go, okay, now we have enough data, we'll invest.
Yeah. My name is Nate Gillespie. I lead the creative services team at Inkling, which is a cloud-based publishing startup in San Francisco. This comes all the time because we consult with our customers who say, I want to make something really exciting and new and different. My job is actually leading bankruptcy litigation cases in the UK. I don't know how to make this content about bankruptcy exciting. And I think that exactly your idea of sort of helping people take risks that feel less risky by making them smaller, by letting them experiment, putting them in workspaces and using tools that allow them to really quickly try something, see if it worked. If it didn't work, try again. That's not a failure or a risk. That's an experiment that you can get. You're meant to keep it earning.
Exactly. And if you view yourself as a scientist doing some experiments, that no matter what the result, it's going to be interesting. And if you spend way too much time and money and resources in something that isn't successful, shame on you for not doing the experiments that are going to let you know whether you're going in the right direction or not.